So we are doing this primarily for Chris Burgess. Hi, Chris, who's in London, and won't be watching this right this very minute because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, but he'll watch it tomorrow probably. So this piece was written by Chris Burgess, who is from London, England, and he submitted to our search for new musicals, and this piece won our search for new musicals last year. And the prize for that is to get a reading, which is what's happening tonight, and then we will give Chris a bunch of feedback, and he's going to do another revision, and then we will do another concert reading of the piece this summer as part of our conference in July, a revised version. So I think the only thing anybody watching needs to know is that this takes place in 1923 in London. We are not doing British accents, but imagine them. And it's based on the true story of the trial of Edith Thompson from 1923. So without further ado, this is Entertaining Murder. It's dark, past midnight. The only light is from a pale moon and a distant lamppost. A woman is standing in the street, clutching her husband, who is slumped on the ground, blood pouring from him.
Oh God, no! No!
Somebody help her! Somebody run to her side! Somebody come to the aid of her husband! Her husband is bleeding to death. Look at the blood on her hands and her coat. Ruby red blood gushing out of his throat.
Somebody help me. Somebody hear me, please, God. What can I do except be here and watch him? Just watch him struggle for breath. Somebody help me. Help me. Help me. Help me, please.
A neighbor is alerted, runs to help, calls for a doctor who finally arrives. The woman's husband is examined, but it's too late. He's dead.
He can't be dead.
He's dead.
He can't be dead.
He's dead.
No! This didn't happen. This didn't happen at all. I don't believe in it. This is a nightmare. A nightmare. I must wake up. When I wake up, I will safe in my bed. This isn't real. This is all in my head. And this never happened. This never happened. This never happened.
But it did happen. On the evening of the 3rd of October, 1922, in a London suburb called Ilford. The woman's name is Edith Thompson, and the death of her husband and her trial for his murder became one of the most notorious trials in British judicial history. Why it happened, how it happened, well, that's our story. A true story, and a dark and murky one. This is a tale that takes place in half-light, so many things in it kept out of sight.
It's a story of murder and lust,
and that's why it compels me.
A tale of the unjust and the just,
which attracts and repels me.
It starts as we've seen by the light of the moon. More merciless light will be cast on it soon.
It's a story I can't understand,
so we need to explore it.
Of murder,
planned or unplanned,
and I can't ignore it. Nobody knows in the end what is fact. It smacks more of fiction than reading a tract, and somehow the story keeps pulling me in. This tale of deceit and destruction and sin.
It's a tale that begins with a kiss and love in its glory, and ends in a total abyss, this desperate story. A tale like a jigsaw that's never complete, a story that hasn't a plot that is neat, a story that's never quite clear as to why or to how, a story about to start here. And now.
But why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm a writer, and murder trials fascinate me. The 100th anniversary of Edith Thompson's trial is approaching in 2022. I thought it would make a good hook for a book, so did my publisher, so... Of course, there are many murder trials, and we love them, don't we? All those gory details, the whodunit stuff, the suspense while you wait for the verdict. But this one has more question marks than most hovering over it, and it's drawn me in more than any other case I've ever explored. I like to stick to the facts, and everything I tell you will be true. Quotes from the trial, from police files, from newspapers printed at the time, and everything the participants said or wrote will be quoted verbatim. So whenever you hear from them, these are the words they actually said or wrote. But I can't help filling in the gaps, exploring what might have gone on behind what we can read in the public record, beyond what's there in black and white. Words, words, dry as a bone, ink on the page, lifeless as stone. Behind them stir images, pictures, feelings, music. I hear music.
The music of their inner lives.
In my imagination.
The music of their hearts and souls, of turmoil and elation.
Music unbidden resounds in my ears,
Maybe revealing their hopes and their fears.
I can't say I know why they made their choices, but I hear their voices in this music. But let me get back to the facts. The morning after the death of Percy Thompson, his wife Edith is asked by the police to assist their investigations. She makes a statement explaining she'd been at the theater with her husband and they'd arrived at Ilford Station and were walking home.
My husband suddenly went into the roadway. I went after him and he fell up against me. He was staggering. He was bleeding. I cannot remember if I saw anyone else there or not. I know that there was none there when he staggered up against me.
So in this version of the story, her husband collapsed out of the blue. But this doesn't add up. His body is covered in stab wounds. Clearly, someone else was there, someone responsible for his murder. Murder.
Murder. Murder.
Don't call it murder. How is it murder? It's an accident, I know that for sure. Just an accident, I know it's not more than that. Don't jump to some conclusion and assume that it's a fact and call it murder. It wasn't murder. There's no proof of that, so don't use that word. No proof of that, so don't be absurd and say you're sure you know what happened and you know the state of play. It wasn't murder.
Murder. Murder. Murder. Murder. Murder.
Edith is either in denial or lying. The police interview her husband's friends and family to discover if anyone held a grudge against him. It is her husband's brother who mentions a young man who'd been a lodger in his house and left under a cloud. Almost immediately, the police identify and apprehend the young Freddie Bywaters. It's clearly murder. The proof of murder is the evidence of blood found on his coat. That's what made the police inspector gloat and crow. When he verified the fact, they were also keen to know that it was murder.
Murder. Murder. Murder.
Murder! Exhibit 6 in the court case is Freddie's statement confessing that he is indeed the assailant.
I waited for Mrs. Thompson and her husband. When near Ensley Gardens, I pushed her to one side, also pushing him further up the street. I said to him, "You've got to separate from your wife." He said, "No." I said, "You will have to." We struggled. I took a knife from my pocket, and we fought, and he got the worst of it.
When Edith is confronted with the fact that Freddie has been apprehended and confessed, she breaks down immediately.
Oh, God. Oh, God, why did he do it? I did not want him to do it.
Those are her words as reported by Detective Inspector Sellers, who witnessed the moment she admitted she did see Freddie attack her husband.
Yes, I saw him. Saw my lover there. Yes, I saw him. And dear God, I swear I was shocked to the core when I knew for sure it was him. When I saw him, then the floodgates fell. When I saw him, then a flash of hell came so clearly in view. At that moment I knew they'd have him for murder first degree. Yes, murder done for me. He knifed him and knifed him and knifed him until he was dead. He didn't have done that if only he'd waited instead. It's an omen. Now it's all too late. Got an omen. Now he's sealed his fate and my husband's fate too. Think of what he went through. Think of him. Think of Percy and how he had never done anything wrong. How did he deserve that? To die in the street, to lie there and bleed like some piece of meat. I'll remember the sight and the sound of it my whole life long. How he cried out in pain and fought for his life and went to his grave and paled by a knife. From now on, there in hell, as far as I can tell, and nothing and no one can ever repair what's been done. No matter how cleverly this tragic tale may be spun.
Exhibit 5 in the court case is Edith's revised statement. In this version, she now admits that she knows exactly the identity of the murderer.
The man, who I know is Freddie Bywaters, he was wearing a blue overcoat and a gray hat.
Edith and Freddie are held in custody as the killing is investigated. The police must gather as much evidence as they can. And this is when they discover an item that is to change everything about the nature of this case. To them and to me, it's a treasure trove. Because what is discovered, hidden at the base of Freddie's bed, is a locked box containing 64 love letters from Edith.
64 letters. 64 letters.
He saved my letters. Every word, every phrase, every sentence I wrote straight from my heart.
Every hope, every longing, every feeling that she felt for me, they charge.
Every intimate confession, every truth she had to tell, not a word of it was censored, forged in heaven and in hell.
Edith is touched that Freddie kept all her letters, but she soon realizes that her most intimate words to Freddie could be used as evidence in court. Now her letters are exposed for all the world to see, and there's nothing left to hide.
And there's nothing left for me. I am my letters.
Her precious letters.
Not a word, not a phrase, not a sentence did not come from my soul.
64 letters.
As I wrote in my parlor to my lover, every sentence made me whole.
Now every intimate confession can be quoted in the press, and they've emptied her of anything she ever could confess. They have her letters,
Her loving letters.
her letters,
My letters.
64 letters.
These letters turn what what might have been a footnote in legal history into something extraordinary. Without them, we would only have court transcripts and police documents, but these letters are a way into the heart and soul of the story. They are love letters that describe Edith and Freddie's affair in intimate detail. There's real passion and beauty in the prose. You can barely believe they were written nearly 100 years ago. They bring Edith's voice to life so vividly.
The music of her inner life,
In my imagination,
the music of her heart and soul, of turmoil and elation.
music from decades ago in my ears.
Music that somehow has lasted the years, unmuted by time and transcending fashion.
I still hear her passion in this music. But I'm veering away from the facts again. That's what we must focus on now, as the murder case goes to the highest court in the land, the Old Bailey. As far as Freddie's concerned, it seems like an open and shut case. He's clearly guilty of murdering Percy Thompson. He admitted as much, and even led the police to the location where he dropped the murder weapon, a 5.5-inch long knife, which, when it is displayed to the jury, makes them gasp. But what about Edith? Why is she on trial? The answer is to be found in her letters. They provide suggestions that possibly, she egged Freddie on to murder her husband. Or did she? That is the crux of the court case. The accused couple are grilled about the events leading up to the murder. Edith is asked to give some background to her marriage.
I was married to Percy Thompson on 15th February, 1915. I think I was never really happy with my husband.
She goes on to explain how she fell in love with Freddie.
In June 1921, I went with my husband and some friends to the Isle of Wight for a holiday. The prisoner Bywaters accompanied us.
The reason Freddie came along is because he was rather keen on Edith's younger sister, Avis. She was one of the holidaymakers, and it was she who invited the young man along. However, during the course of the week, Freddie's eye strays from Avis to Edith. One afternoon, the two of them find themselves alone together, whether by accident or design, we never quite know. What we do know is that Freddie suggests they take a ride on the tourist bus to see the sights.
Won't you ride with me once round the island and let Percy and Avis go hang? Don't say but, don't say if, we'll be back in a jiff in this open-top charabanc. Let the bus take the strain and enjoy it. Just relax and stop watching the clock. Take a trip round the island, we'll do it in style with an Isle of Wight stick of rock.
What a jaunt, what a spree.
Just an innocent trip with me.
What's to lose, what's the harm?
Won't you trust me and take my arm? It's the sunniest day that we've had yet. Let's enjoy it before it turns gray. Hop aboard while they've still got a seat left, and the charabanc gets on its way. Here we are, both enjoying the view now, like a honeymoon couple might do. There's so much to be seen, if you know what I mean. And the best sight I'm seeing is you.
Freddie reaches over to Edith and kisses her. And if you want to know how we know this, Exhibit 53 in the court case, a letter dated June 14th, 1922. That's exactly a year after this incident, a letter of reminiscence written by Edith to Freddie.
1 year ago today, we went for that memorable ride round the island in the charabanc. Do you remember? Last night, when I went to bed, I kissed you goodnight in my mind, because that was the first night you kissed me.
Oh, the kiss was very likely a polite kiss. They were on public transport, after all, both on best behavior, and it was just one kiss.
One little kiss,
Tell me, what's the harm in that?
one little kiss,
It's hardly criminal.
one little kiss.
It doesn't mean that much at all. It's just a little innocent flirtation. That's all it is and nothing more. I'll put it in the past and I'll forget it. There isn't any more of that in store. One little kiss.
I think she liked it, yes, in fact, I'm sure she did.
One little kiss.
She's got that look that says she'd like a whole lot more.
One little kiss.
If I could get her on her own, then I could test that out for sure.
There can't be any more of this in store.
I'm sure.
He thinks he's really something, I can see that. But then again, he's really rather sweet. I don't know why I said that this means nothing. It's not as if he swept me off my feet. One little kiss.
One kiss is all it really takes.
One little kiss.
And off we go.
Little kiss doesn't mean it's spring.
Makes a fella sing.
Doesn't mean a thing at all.
And it's true that one little kiss might never have led to anything more. But fate steps in. Freddie is a sailor who needs lodgings when he's not aboard ship, and Edith and Percy have a spare room in their house. Percy is a shipping clerk, and Edith works in a hat shop in the West End of London. They earn well enough, but some extra rent money would certainly come in handy. Percy reckons that having Freddie as a lodger is a nice enough idea. So Edith and Freddie are thrown together, living under the same roof, day in, day out. Feelings brew. Freddie is 18, testosterone fueled. One afternoon he invites Edith out for a walk in Kew Gardens. It's a very romantic setting. Another kiss is exchanged.
Another
Can't
kiss.
pretend I didn't like that quite a lot.
Another kiss.
All right, one more.
Another.
Okay, we get the picture. Who knows how many kisses were exchanged behind the rose bushes in Kew Gardens that day? There's no letter that verifies the exact number. Anyway, Edith is falling pretty hard for young Freddie. Fine, except not really fine, because Edith is married to Percy. Percy, a hard worker, solid and dependable, a fair enough catch when Edith first married him, but now, in court, Edith stays.
My husband and I very often discuss the question of separation, long before June of 1921.
And in one of her letters, you can hear the sound of a dissatisfied sigh as she writes,
I was content to just jog along and not think.
why did she marry him? She must have loved him once.
I thought I loved him once.
What did she see in him?
I saw a decent man, an honest, decent man.
That's what she needed.
Or so I thought.
A man to lean on.
That's what I sought.
Someone who'd keep her sane and steady.
Who would be there always ready to catch me should I fall. I thought that that was all I needed from a man. But now I understand that wasn't love. Every night he sits here adding up his numbers. Then at 10 o'clock it's bedtime and he slumbers. And I hear him start to snore, a sound that I abhor. Wouldn't anyone want more than this domestic bliss?
Now she needs more than him.
I need a true romance.
She's looking for romance.
I can't bear tedium.
The ticking of the clock.
The death knell of the clock. I've only one life to live, and I have so much to give.
She needs a lover who adores her, and not somebody who bores her.
I crave his tender touch. Don't tell me that's too much to ask for from a man who understands. I die for love.
She'd die for love.
I die for love.
Edith and Percy and Freddie continue living alongside each other. The sexual tension building up in that household must have been palpable. Not that much can be done about it with Percy always there. Then, 9 days after Freddie moves in, on the 27th of June 1921, Edith takes the day off work. It's a special day, Freddie's 19th birthday. Percy goes off to work as usual, and Edith is left alone in the house with the still teenage lodger. She goes to his room and knocks on his door. As a special birthday treat, she brings him breakfast in bed. The sleepy Freddie stirs, and seeing Edith, he stirs again. It seems that there's more on offer than a bowl of cornflakes. Soon, the two of them are making love.
I never realized the difference between man and man, but now I'm making some comparisons that I understand. One is cool and functional and does as he will. One is warm and passionate and tries to fulfill me and takes me to places that I've never known and makes me feel things I can't feel on my own. I am him, he is me, and I'm grateful for what I've been shown. There is another world to travel to of sensual bliss. Before today, I thought a kiss was a kiss was a kiss. But one night with a lover who knows just what to do beats a life with a lover who simply looks through me. I know now the power of body and soul, the power of gaining and losing control. He is me, I am him, and our hands combine and make me whole.
Edith, my love, your body is mine, mine for the taking and holding and having, for making and breaking. I'll take you where you want to go.
Oh, how do I turn my back on ecstasy and live my old life? Return to sitting in a sitting room, his cold, sober wife. One man's cool and functional and does as he will. One man's warm and passionate, tries to fulfill me
And I'll take me to places that I've never known, and make you feel things I can't feel on your own. When our bodies combine, when our bodies combine, when
letters constantly refer back to the date when they first made love, the 27th of June, not just because it's Freddie's birthday, but because Edith felt reborn that day. Her letters are full of breathless references to her lovemaking with Freddie.
It seems like a great welling up of love, of feeling, as if I am wax in your hands, to do with as you will, and I feel that if you do as you wish, I shall be happy.
She makes reference to the marks on her arms, which she savors as a reminder of the sadomasochistic bedroom games they play together.
When I want you, I'll even bruise myself as you used to, and then take myself to court for cruelty to myself. I've made a bruise on each side of my wrist, but it doesn't do any good. It doesn't feel like you.
When these quotes are read out in court, some members of the jury recoil. One of them described his queasy reaction in a letter to the Daily Express some years later.
The whole of Mrs. Thompson's correspondence were handed to the jury, and it was my duty to read them out. Nauseous is hardly strong enough to describe their contents.
Edith's graphic letters are read out in the courtroom in front of her friends, her neighbors, her parents. She sits mortified, stricken, often sobbing. Her private passion for her lover is used to expose and humiliate her. The press reprint all the salacious details, and the British public lap it up, whilst at the same time expressing appropriate moral outrage. I don't know how you can tell, but you nearly always can. She's a creature spawned in hell, a scarlet woman. Like a rampant alley cat, she conducted her affair. Tell me, how could she do that, a married woman? We've all read the news, and it's not very nice. We all know her type and her dealings in vice. Would her life have been so wild and as reckless as it was if she'd maybe had a child, this barren woman?
She had congress with a boy who she lured into her bed. What foul tricks did she employ?
This older woman. Impressions take shape, so swiftly they're made, and once they are formed, they take so long to fade. To the world it seems apparent what creature we have here. She's an older, barren, married, scarlet woman.
Nauseous!
Edith and Freddie continue their affair behind Percy's back. It's never quite clear if Percy suspects anything, but he certainly becomes irritated by Freddie's over-attentive attitude towards his wife. Things come to a head one afternoon when Edith is sewing. Freddie recounts the incident in court.
It was a pin that caused the trouble. Mrs. Thompson, who was sewing, said, "I want a pin." And I said, "I will go and get you one." I went and got a pin.
Edith picks up the story in one of her letters.
Do you remember the pin incident? And the subsequent remark from him? You like to have someone always tacked onto you to run your little errands and obey all your requests.
Edith answers Percy back. Sharp words are exchanged, words that flare into an all-out row. In court, Edith explains.
I had some trouble with my husband that day. He said a lot of things to me about my family that I resented.
Like any couple who know each other too well, they have plenty of ammunition to hand. Months, maybe years of unspoken resentment boil over, and soon they are at each other's throats. Edith's court testimony continues.
He then struck me several times and eventually threw me across the room. Bywaters was in the garden at this time, and in the course of the disturbance, he came into the room and stopped my husband.
You can imagine how that goes down with Percy. I can just see him turning on the young man, livid.
Who the hell are you to tell me what I ought to do? Get out of here and leave us be. Go on, disappear. You've got no right to interfere. I want you out, and so does she. We don't need anyone to clutter up the house the way you do. You're like an irritating fly I want to swat. I've had enough of how you're always getting underneath our feet and how you stick your nose in places you should not. You need to learn that this is no concern of yours. So sling your hook and pack your case No, this is no concern of yours. So find yourself another place. Maybe rent a dirty bed, sit in some godforsaken slum. Why would I give a damn the way you live your life? But I have to say there's one thing that I think you ought to do, and that's to live it without someone else's wife. Edith is mine, and she is no concern of yours.
She's not
Cross the line.
yours and never
Shouldn't cross.
was.
No,
Swallow
she is
that,
no
'cause it's
concern
a
of
fact.
yours.
She's not your goods,
and I'm the boss.
not
And
a
it's
puppet
me who
on a
calls the
string,
shots,
so
and
don't
it's me
treat
who
her like
says
a
that's
thing.
so.
She's
And I'm
not
telling you what's what. And the one
yours.
thing you should
Just
know is
you
we live the way we
wait.
like.
Just you
So you
wait.
get on your bike.
Wait and see.
I hope I've
See
made that
her
clear.
choose
Now
me.
go. I've had you
She
up to
will
here.
choose
So
me.
Freddie packs his bags and finds other lodgings. The incident exposes a rift in Edith and Percy's marriage, but they carry on as before, living alongside each other. Edith has to make out that Freddie's absence means nothing to her, but in fact, she's devastated. She sees Freddie a few times secretly, but after a month, he's off to sea for several weeks. Edith feels abandoned. She pines for him, trapped as she is in a loveless marriage in a drab suburb of outer London.
September, October, November, December. I'm counting the weeks and the months, and the time goes by slowly. It's torture, but all the same, still I keep waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh Christ, only got one life. Why should I waste it? I want a fun life. Grab it and taste it. But where is the fun? Where is the sun? In Ilford. Ilford. Even the sound of it makes me sick. Passion in Ilford gives me quick. Suburban and small, I don't want it at all. It's a bore. I want more than Ilford. Ilford. Counting the days and the weeks and the months. In Ilford.
The only way Edith can connect to Freddie is by writing to him. And this is where her vast collection of letters begins. They become a lifeline. Well, I get that. Anyone who keeps a journal or a diary or feels a need to write can surely connect to those confessional outpourings. And they really are outpourings. Edith writes to Freddie daily, obsessively, pages and pages and pages, scribbling down her most intimate feelings on her characteristic lilac writing paper.
Darlingest, I am writing this to tell you that I really have to see you at the earliest. Every day without you here is hell on earth. When I wake up in the morning and you're far away, I wonder what my life is worth. Write me letters everywhere you go. Tell me that you're safe, promise on your life you'll write me letters so I know. Smell the ink you use, kiss the paper that you send. Don't tell me you'd refuse your lover and your friend.
I can't write this letter, but I know I should. Wish I could do better, but I never could. Writing is exasperating, my idea of hell. And it's so frustrating when you can't do something well.
Write me something, anything will do. Tell me that you're sad, spell it out in words, and say you really miss me too. Write to me, Freddie, from across the 7 seas. Write to me, Freddie, I'm begging you, please.
I'm a man of action, I think we're agreed. And your satisfaction, I hope, is guaranteed. Excuse me if my missives are few and far between. When I've got you in my bed, then you'll know what I mean. That's when I take the lead, and there's no need for
Write me something.
words. I'm no good.
Anything will do.
I'm no good at
Tell
letters.
me that you're sad, spell it in our words.
But
Say you really
when
miss me
I
too.
get you in my
Send
bed,
me something to read.
that's when I take the lead.
And please send it with speed.
And there's no
Can't you see I
need for
for
words.
Edith's chirruping desperation to maintain contact with Freddie and share her life with him is apparent in every sentence of her letters. Whenever she's away from him, she feels only half alive. But she goes through the motions, getting up to go to work in the hat shop, visiting dull relatives, sharing a bed with a husband she resents, yet smiling through in public.
Things are always the same old round. Unless you are in England, and then it's a different world.
But she must wait and wait and wait for him. She reads endless romantic novels which fuel her secret attachment to her distant lover, and which maybe influence her prose style.
I shall always want you to take me in both your arms and hold me for hours.
When Freddie eventually does return to her, Edith's erotic life ignites again, and their furtive affair takes flight once more. Now she is no longer singing a dirge in Ilford. Now her music is a rhapsody of desire.
Take me to places beyond the day-to-day, where we'll escape suburbia, its clouds of dishcloth gray.
I'll take you places where lovers rendezvous, to places under lock and key where I can be with you.
And even if we're forced to meet at lunchtimes in some flat, the only thing that matters is you're there. We're not defined by time or space or petty things like that. Why should we care if we can share those secret places? Nobody can see us.
Nobody can hear us, nobody will know we're there.
Nobody will find us.
Nobody will hurt us in our little private lair. And in these places where only we exist, we'll give in to temptations that we don't need to resist.
Just you,
Just me,
no husbands and no wives,
alone and free.
no witnesses to our forbidden lives. And we don't give a damn what's right or wrong. We only know that here's where we belong, in those places. So be my white knight, darling, and sweep me off my feet, and we'll escape together far away.
I'll take you places that only lovers reach.
You've taught me how to get there, but I'm sure you've more to teach.
Exotic places, both sacred and profane, where we can crave each other like an addict craves cocaine.
I know they say you shouldn't go where angels fear to tread.
Come with
But
me,
they don't know those
Edie.
places
I'll take
like
you
we
there. Come with me.
If I could choose one bedroom to occupy my bed,
Take you where we'll do those things you love
take me
to
to
do in secret
those
places.
scintillating places.
Thrilling secret places.
I
And you.
Sexual obsession. Surely everyone can relate to that mixture of joy and madness that love and sex can inspire. We've all been there, haven't we? Anyway, after such heights of such passion, the only way is down. And it's very dispiriting for Edith when Freddie has to go off to sea yet again. She knows that Freddie is a young man with maybe a girl in every port. His expert lovemaking is testament to the fact that he's surely had a lot of practice. And she's acutely aware that she's nearly 10 years older than he. She worries that he'll run off with a younger woman who is fancy-free. After all, what can she offer him in the long term? She's married. And divorce, well... Divorce, 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 the very word is a taboo. It's simply not the thing to do, no, not in 1922. It's difficult to understand how beyond the pale the notion of divorce was back then. It was considered a disgrace, a scandal. You live in exile on your own, a king or queen without a throne, a social leper all alone. If you divorce, divorce, divorce. In 1922, Great Britain had a population of some 40 million, and there were a mere 800 divorces a year. A divorce was expensive and perilously hard to gain, plus you needed legal grounds: lack of consummation, physical abuse, adultery. Edith could claim none of these. As for incompatibility being a valid reason for divorce, that wasn't on the radar until the 1950s. If Percy didn't agree to a divorce, then Edith would not be granted one. She did ask, he didn't consent. She was trapped.
Mine is a real live cage with a keeper as well, to whom I have to account to every day, every hour, every minute nearly.
What to do? Well, one option she comes up with is to make a pledge to Freddie, a promise that they will eventually be together if they only hold out and wear Percy down for, say, 5 years.
5 years?
5 years is more than a quarter of Freddie's life so far. Can he really be expected to hang on precariously for 5
long years? What kind of plan is that?
5 long years.
What sort of man could wait 5
long years? And for what? What was Edith really offering other than a long-term possibility of them eloping into a penniless sunset? Edith panics. She realizes she must offer something more immediate, something more tangible. This is when she starts intimating that somehow the two of them could maybe rent or even buy a little place together.
Darling, could I get a furnished one at first until you come home next time and look for an unfurnished one in the meantime? I don't want to furnish it all myself. I want you to be with me. Everything we do must be together in the future. A little flat, somewhere we can call our own.
A little flat,
For just the two of us.
a little flat.
A cozy sweet abode somewhere. I haven't really thought about the postcode, but yet it's all here in my head. I only know it has to have a bedroom, with you, my darling Freddie, in my bed. A little flat.
She keeps on talking about somewhere we can
A
live.
little flat.
She keeps on banking on a future we've in
A
store.
little flat.
But all this talking and not doing drives me crazy, so no more.
I want a picket fence and roses around the door.
No more.
I know you're thinking this is just a pipe dream. It's Edie building castles in the air. But I know I could make the vision concrete if you, my darling Freddie, join me there. A little flat.
Oh no, here she goes again.
A little flat.
And does it
A
end?
little flat.
Can't
We'll
she,
share the front door key.
can't she ever let it be?
Only you and me, so
charming fantasy, but without any money to back it up, it remains just that, a fantasy. In her heart of hearts, Edith knows this. Freddie's a teenager on a very basic wage, and although Edith pays for half the mortgage on her house, this is 1922, and a house was always legally in the husband's name, so she has no rights of ownership at all.
Darling, it's funds that are our stumbling block. Until we have those, we can do nothing.
So what next? How can Edith truly convince Freddie that they can one day be together? This is the turning point of the story, where the whole thing takes a different tone. Because it is now Edith starts dropping hints that maybe, just maybe, there is another way of getting around her attachment to Percy.
Meaning?
It's just a thought I had.
What thought?
You mustn't think me bad.
Tell me.
Not every husband lives forever.
Edith?
And he's got a dicky heart. Sometimes husbands can depart before their time. Without reason, without rhyme. It's just a thought I had.
Edith starts sending Freddie newspaper clippings with her letters. Exhibit 15B.
Poison chocolates for university chief.
Exhibit 15C.
Beautiful dancer drugged.
Exhibit 22A.
Mysterious death after doses of cocaine and morphia.
Exhibit 22B.
Patient killed by overdose.
Exhibit 55A.
Rat poison consumed by fowl kills woman.
This is a particularly grisly case of death by chicken soup. The chicken had eaten rat poison, and this was passed on to the woman who consumed the soup. There are many more examples like these, and it's this collection of clippings that contributes hugely to the case against Edith.
Proof that death was on her mind.
Proof of her intent to kill.
Proof that she coerced the boy.
Proof she exercised her will to prompt murder. First degree murder. She's the key. If she had never sown the seed, the boy would not have done the deed. Well, that's what the prosecution claims, but was there really proof? What is the actual evidence that Edith truly had murderous intentions?
Hoarding her cuttings about deceased people.
Well, okay, we've heard examples of those, but there is a context here. Those clippings are mixed up with scores of other clippings with no mention of murder at all, such as...
Do men like red-haired women?
And...
The ideal dance partner.
And...
The best wine I have ever drunk.
So, it's not as if homicide was Edith's sole preoccupation. Okay, what other evidence can be held against her?
Buying a light bulb which she breaks in pieces.
I knew that would come up. This is when, supposedly, Edith becomes proactive and actually does something that could be described as murderous. Or does she? Well, Edith says she does. It's there in her letters in black and white. She writes to Freddie telling him she'll try to get Percy to swallow ground glass. She describes how she mixes the broken pieces of a light bulb in with some mashed potatoes.
I was buoyed up with the hope of the light bulb. And I used a lot, big pieces too, not powdered. And it has no effect. I tried 3 times, but the 3rd time, he found a piece, so I've given up.
So one of the pieces of glass was too big? Right, just trying to picture that. Curiously, there's nothing in her description about Percy screaming in agony with a lacerated mouth because he was given shards of glass to chew. But hey, we'll let that pass. Next.
Next on her list is her mission to gas him.
Neat idea, could have worked, but somehow she doesn't get around to it. It seems she's discouraged by an anecdote Percy tells about how he was nearly suffocated by gas fumes when he was young.
He says he fought and fought with himself to keep conscious. I'll never die, except naturally. I'm like a cat with 9 lives.
Damn it, just her luck to be married to a man impervious to being gassed. Plus, there are practical issues.
I wish we had not got electric light. It would be easy.
fate seems to be against her when it comes to gassing. Next.
Then there's the option of feeding him poison.
Yes, maybe inspired by the fatal chicken soup. Poisoning is a very popular means of murder in the early 20th century, especially between married couples. And Edith claims to have tried it, but there's always some excuse for why it doesn't work.
He puts great stress on the fact of the tea tasting bitter, as if something had been put in it. Ugh.
So she abandons this tactic pretty smartly, just as well. Whatever tips she's getting from the popular press or cheap detective novels clearly are not paying off.
What a wonderful cornucopia of ways to dispatch a man, though you may think that each of them is a rather hokey plan.
Reading Edith's letters, I get the impression of a woman with a butterfly mind. It's bizarre how she mixes flighty gossip with references to murder. Take the comment we just heard about gassing Percy.
I wish we had not got electric light. It would be easy.
But this is immediately followed in the very next sentence by...
Bill and Marjorie are coming over next week.
It's as if Edith is throwing tidbits out to Freddie, playing with notions, but never seriously focusing on them. You see where I'm going with this? Edith is clearly a bit of a fantasist. She spends a lot of her time lost in a world of dreams and wish fulfillment. Freddie is away so often that she's forced to conduct her affair with him in a kind of cloud cuckoo land. And it's no surprise to learn that she is addicted to romance novels.
In the make-believe of a book, I can live a life that I've never known. In the fairy tale of a yarn, I can see a world that I've not been shown. I can journey to places that I've never been. I can view destinations that I've never seen. In the make-believe of a book, we die and live in the books we read, while we are reading them, and then when we have finished, the books die and we live, or exist, just drag on through years and years until when, who knows?
Edith's discontent with her lot is made even clearer when she writes to Freddie.
Oh God, if only I could live another life.
In the make-believe of a role, there is not a trace of worry or strife. In the fairy tale of her mind, she can live a life beyond her own life. She can take center stage and fulfill her desires. She can be anybody the story requires. In the make-believe of a role.
Edith's own family testify in court that some of the incidents she reports in her letters are clearly fictional.
The purest imagination.
So says Edith's father about the story about that Percy had informed him about Edith's illicit affair. It never happened. Edith's sister agrees, using exactly the same phrase. Pure imagination on my sister's part, she says.
In the make-believe of her life, she can write of things that do not exist. In the fairy tale of her soul, many wondrous lies emerge from the mist. She can conjure up stories and nobody cares. She can fabricate fiction as far as she dares.
In the make-believe of her life, it's not real, it's just ink on the pages.
It's not real, but a nebulous dream.
It's not real, it's like actors on stages. And nothing is what it might seem. Maybe Edith should have been a writer. She was certainly a compulsive reader. Speaking of which, one romantic novel she was fond of got her into a lot of trouble. Belladonna by Robert Hitchens. It evokes the same sort of exotic world inhabited by Rudolph Valentino, a screen matinee idol who was at his peak at this time. Edith had sent a copy of Belladonna to Freddie. Attached to it was a note which read, "Could this be useful?" That's a very incriminating note, because the leading character in the story is a woman who plans to murder her husband with deadly nightshade. The prosecution gets the jury very excited about this.
strikes fear. Belladonna, beware, she's near. Check the contents of all that you eat if you care for your life. And be sure not to take Belladonna to wed as your wife. Belladonna, Belladonna, she's eyeing up another man and planning yet another plan. So keep well away from the scandalous Belladonna. Look, don't touch, I'll tell you why. If you do, you're sure to die.
Belladonna is discussed in court as if she were a real person instead of a character in a trashy piece of fiction. It's as if the prosecution is suggesting that Edith was directly mentored by her in her wicked ways.
Belladonna, she kills with style. Belladonna, so full of guile. She's a beautiful charmer and full of erotic appeal. But be careful if she is the cook and you're eating her meal. Belladonna, Belladonna, a murderer, there's no dispute, a poisoner of some repute. So keep well away from the beautiful Belladonna. Belladonna, Belladonna.
Edith insists that she is no belladonna. She states quite clearly that she never really administered poison any more than she really tried to gas Percy or add ground glass to his omelets.
I wrote that to let Bywaters think I was willing to do anything to help him, to retain his affections.
Freddie corroborates this.
It was melodrama on her part.
He is asked if Edith's letters in any way incited him to do any act of violence.
Nothing whatever.
Edith's defense lawyer points out that Percy's body had been disinterred and put through a second autopsy to check for any sign of poison in his system.
What did they find? They found no possible trace of any sort or kind of poison. They found no trace of glass having been administered in that body.
Result? You might think, but actually no. This scientific evidence makes surprisingly little impact. The press and the public far prefer the story of Edith as the Messalina of the suburbs, a dangerous vamp, a corrupter of youth. Not a breakfast table in the land is free from discussions about the trial. And of course, the one burning question that everyone is asking, and what we still need to ask, is this. Did you do it? Did you really try to feed him powdered glass?
Did you do it?
Did you crush up bits of tied light bulb, may I ask?
Did you check out every murder every husband-hating woman ever hatched?
Did you bone up on the methods that they used for every terminal dispatch? Did you do it? Did you really go out that far on the brink? Did you do it? Did you really pour that poison in his drink?
Did you plan to overdose him on the pills he took to get him through the night?
Did you really go to that extreme because you had to have him out of sight? I need to know, so take it slow. I want to hear it blow by blow by blow by blow.
Did you get to use the opium you bought, or did you buy it as a joke?
Did you contemplate the quinine or the cyanide or hyoscine or coke? Did you do it? Edith fiercely protests her innocence throughout the trial. And what is remarkable is how consistently Freddie backs her up. Loyal, loving Freddie never for one moment suggests that Edith ever implied in any real way that he should harm Percy Thompson.
I swear she is completely innocent. She didn't commit the murder. I did. She never planned it. She never knew about it. She's innocent, absolutely innocent.
Oh, call me as romantic a fool as Edith may have been, but I can't help imagining what Edith feels as she hears him saying this. Standing there alone in the dock, with dirt being thrown at her from all sides, this young man continues to be her Sir Galahad.
I'm sure his lawyer must have told him, put the blame on her. Claim you're just some crazy mixed-up kid. Make the jury feel that she's the one who urged you on. She's the reason why you did what you did. But in spite of that, he still refuses to agree. But in spite of that, he still says no. Even through all that, my boy is standing up for me. Even through all that, he says that's not so. Even now, he's behaving with such grace. Even now, he stays strong. Even now, though it weakens his own case, he denies that I did wrong. Yes, I know that he's reckless and that he was out to kill. Yes, I know just what he's guilty of. But I can't deny I don't have feelings for him still. Guilty, yes he is, but guilty too of love. He's the only one, still the only one. He's the only one who ever made me feel alive. He's the only one who showed me bliss. He's the only one who got me through the 9 to 5. He's the only one who's getting me through this. Even now, he still believes in who I am. Only he is my friend. Only he still believes I'm worth a damn. Only he stands up for me until the end.
The court is oblivious to what Edith feels for her ex-lover. Feelings are not the domain of the law. They are far too intangible. Unlike Edith's words, they exist in black and white in her letters. They are not hearsay. They count as concrete evidence. Because of this, certain things Edith blithely committed to paper can be quoted back at her again and again in the courtroom. Fitting phrases together that don't quite belong, making an innocent sentence sound wrong, playing with words, taking something she said out of context and then repeating it over and over again, playing with words.
Lawyers who practice at crosswords are expert at such common games, honing their tricks so defendants are shot down in flames.
Every letter she wrote read by carrion crows who picked them to pieces. Well, that's how it goes. Playing with words. In hundreds of pages of letters, there are actually only a handful of references to dispatching inconvenient husbands. Most vague, many ridiculous, some clearly meant as jokes. For instance,
Yesterday, I met a woman who lost 3 husbands in 11 years, and not through war. 2 were drowned and 1 committed suicide. And some people I know can't lose 1.
but a flippant remark like that doesn't sound quite so amusing when read out loud by a lawyer at the Old Bailey.
And some people can't even lose one.
Then there are comments she makes about having to bear the brunt of her marriage.
I wish I could do something.
That something is easily made to sound very sinister in court.
Something.
It's as if a schoolgirl's diary scrawled with the words, "I hate so-and-so, I hope he dies," has been seized by the police for scrutiny. Every casual utterance put on display and analyzed every which way, playing with words. Though she may try to defend them, does she know quite what she meant, when every meaning, it seems, can be twisted and bent? Edith's defense lawyer advises her that she is not obliged to take the stand and face questioning by the prosecution, but Edith insists. Doubtless she'd seen many films where heroines like Mary Pickford plead their innocence and wring the hearts of the jury. But this is real life, and when she does face the court, she is beset with nerves.
She seems unacquainted with things that she wrote, and looks quite confused with what counsel might quote. She blinks in confusion at questions they ask, and stumbles and falters when she's taught to task. In the passage I have read to you, you were asking Bywaters to send something which he said, according to you, he was going to bring.
That is so.
What was it?
I have no idea.
Have you no idea?
Well, except what he told me.
Well, what did he tell you?
He would bring me something.
Did he not say what the something was?
No, he did not mention anything.
Well, what did he lead you to think it was?
That it was something to give my husband.
With a view to poisoning your husband?
No, that was not the idea. That was not what I expected.
Something to give your husband that would hurt him!
To make him ill.
Did you welcome the suggestion that something should be given to your husband to make him ill?
I did not.
Did you object to it?
Well, I was astonished about
Did
it.
you object to it?
I did at the time.
And although you objected to it, you urged Bywaters to send more quickly than he intended. It soon becomes clear the impression she'll make. It seems that allowing her speaks a mistake. But now she's in this far, there's no going back. Now that the story is fading to black. Fading to black. Fading to black. Fading to black.
One quote in particular proves to be particularly damaging. It's from Edith's very last letter to Freddie, written on the day before the murder. In it, she refers to meeting Freddie in a tea room and discussing various things with him.
Don't forget what we said in the tea room. I'll still risk and try if you will.
What does that mean? What did they talk about in the tea room? Risk what? Try what? It's ambiguous, and ambiguity leads to suspicion. The prosecution presses Edith hard on this.
What did you mean by, don't forget what we said in the tea room, I'll still risk and try if you will?
These are words that refer to my freedom. For too long I'd gone through the mill. I was sick of my life with him, in a home that I'd grown to hate. Every moment was dark and grim, and I've left it all far too late. It was time to move on and at last move away. And I told him my thoughts in the tea room that day. Nothing of murder, nothing of death. I didn't conspire like Lady Macbeth. We talked of the future of sharing a flat. That was all, that was it, nothing more, that was that. That's what we discussed in the tea room.
Was Edith telling the truth? Was there really no talk of murder in the tea room? Murder in the Tea Room sounds like the title of a bad Agatha Christie novel. And come to think of it, it does seem a highly unlikely location for a supposedly conspiratorial discussion about homicide? A tea room? I mean, if you were finalizing the details of a murder, would you really want to sit cheek by jowl with other customers discussing what jam they want on their tea cakes? Really? Look, there's no way of ever knowing what was on their minds in that tea room, but we do know what was on Edith's mind the day before the murder. It's all there in a letter written to Freddie that day. In it, she says,
Darlingest, find me a job abroad. I'll go tomorrow and not say I was going to a soul and have not one little regret.
She is also still toying with the idea of waiting 5 years before deciding what's for the best. It's a pledge that Freddie has never really signed up to, but Edith clearly wants to believe that he might go along with it because of the last line of that final letter, which reads,
We only have 3 3/4 years left, darlingest.
Which leads me to ask this. If a murder was being planned for the following night, why on earth is she thinking stoically about enduring another 3 3/4 years of secrecy and lies? It doesn't add up. Oh, and one last thing. Surely, if the murder was premeditated, why was it such a mess? They'd have surely done a better job than this. If the murder had been planned,
They'd have realized what might have gone amiss. If the murder had been planned, they'd have known they had no alibi at all and abandoned the appalling risk.
they'd have needed a more calculated tryst. If the murder had been planned, they'd have surely tried to cover up their tracks.
They'd have surely had a story they could weave.
They'd have surely built defenses for attacks.
They'd have surely spun a story to believe.
And they'd surely not have ended up like this if the murder had been planned. Above all, they would surely have destroyed the letters. It is their contents alone that led Edith to the Old Bailey.
If the letters had been burned or maybe thrown away, if I'd only thought ahead, we might not be here today. No, you wouldn't go beyond the stand if the murder had been planned.
Something I find difficult to understand about the trial is why Freddie is never thoroughly interrogated about what was going on in his head that night that he killed Percy. There's no attempt by the defense lawyer to enter the mindset of a desperate young man whose desperation and youth might have been flagged up to gain some possible sympathy for him. I'm not claiming I know exactly what was going on in Freddie's head that night, but there are clues. In a letter written barely a fortnight before the murder, Edith writes,
Be jealous so much that you will do something desperate.
It's extraordinary that Edith can say this to Freddie whilst still making no attempt to leave her husband. It's as if she expects Freddie alone to precipitate some kind of crisis while she does nothing. Although actually she's doing far from nothing. She is provoking and confusing Freddie all the time. One moment telling him he's the only man she ever wants in her life, the next moment rubbing in the fact that she's still submitting to sex with her husband. Is it any wonder that Freddie is confused and resentful and frustrated?
She doesn't mean to wound me, but it cuts me like a knife. Knowing that she sleeps with him and she's still his wife, I see him making love to her. The thought makes me recoil. She tells me she has sex with him. My blood begins to boil. It's quite unbearable, unthinkable, and fills me full of hate. But what's the point of hate? I've had enough of that. Enough of that. Then she says she's met another colleague or a friend, and I keep having visions of her flirting with these men. It may be just a neighbor or someone in her shop, but still I'm filled with jealousy and pray for it to stop. My head is pounding now and throbbing now and filling up with pain. But what's the point of pain? I've had enough of that. Enough of that. And then she keeps on talking about being patient and how we have to wait for a future in store. I put up with the blarney and every empty promise, but I can't go on waiting anymore. Not for 5 long years. What kind of plan is that? 5 long years. What sort of man could wait 5 they can go. The questions I ask have no answers, and I only know I don't know what to do, where to go. I've no place, I've no hope. Do they think I'll just sit here like some kind of dope? If I don't make a move, then nothing's ever gonna start. I can't take any more of this, it's tearing me apart. So get me out of this, I'm sick of this excruciating pain. I need to end the pain, I've had enough of that. Enough, enough of that, enough.
It's at this point that Freddie, fueled by drink, picks up his knife, an implement that many sailors kept about them, and catches the train to Ilford, where he knows Edith and Percy will be returning from their night out. By the time he arrives, it is past midnight. He goes to wait for them on the route he knows they'll take to get home. Then, in the lamplight, he sees them approaching.
Look at them, the loving couple, heading home to bed. How can I take in that sight and not be turning red?
Freddie confronts Percy, telling him to let Edith go and allow her a divorce. Percy is having none of it. He retaliates, yelling at Freddie and pushing him aside. Cue Exhibit 6, Freddie's statement about that encounter.
The reason I fought Thompson was because he never acted like a man to his wife. He always seemed several degrees lower than a snake. I loved her, and I could not go on seeing her leading that life.
The row escalates, blows are exchanged. Then, Freddie pulls out his knife.
I did not intend to kill him. I only meant to injure him.
But he's out of control. He plunges the knife in Percy's chest, his back, his throat, again and again.
No!
And again and again.
No!
John Weber lives in a house just a few doors away from the attack. His testimony...
About 12:30 in the morning of 4th of October, just as I was about to retire to bed, I heard a woman's voice saying,
Oh, don't!
in a most piteous manner. On hearing that, I went out into the street.
By the time he gets to Edith, Percy is on the ground bleeding to death. This is where we came in. Freddie, by now, has made a getaway. He catches the first train out of Ilford. He's dazed, upset, yet I feel sure he's certain that what he's done is something he was driven to do.
He made my life a living hell each minute of the day. Who can wonder why I needed him out of the way? Enough was enough was enough was enough was enough.
In court, Freddie claims he killed Percy in self-defense. He clearly thought Percy threatened to shoot him, but Percy had never in his life owned or used a gun. It's a lame defense that is immediately dismissed. As for Edith, the question is there concrete evidence that she spurred Freddie on to murder her husband? Yes, she is certainly guilty of stoking up the pressure cooker inside Freddie's head, and yes, there are certainly wild suggestions in her letters. Her moral compass was certainly askew. But does that make her a criminal? Or do you get what you see? Someone fallible and flawed. Edith never claimed to be a perfect woman. No Madonna and no whore, maybe something in between. Something less and something more, a human woman. Or is that letting her off the hook? Was she a conniving she-devil all along? The 5-day trial comes to an end, and it's time for the concluding remarks. Freddie's defense lawyer has little leverage. What can he say, other than point out Freddie's previous good character? He then appeals to the jury's tenderest instincts.
Judge this young man as you yourselves would be judged. One life has already been sacrificed in this sordid and horrible drama. Is there to be another?
It's the best we can do. Over to Edith's defense lawyer to see what he can come up with. Well, he takes a brave or maybe foolish path by going way out on a limb.
This is not an ordinary charge about ordinary people. No. It is very difficult to get into the atmosphere of a play or opera, but you have to do it in this case. Am I right or wrong in saying that this woman is one of the most extraordinary personalities that you or that I have ever met? Bywaters truly described her, did he not, as a woman who lived an extraordinary life of make-believe. You have read her letters. Have you ever read more beautiful language of love?
It's an extravagantly rhapsodic speech which aims to convince the jury that yes, Edith did on occasion sound like she was entertaining murder in her letters, but it was only ever to one end.
It was an extraordinary way of showing I am prepared to go to any extreme to keep your love.
Stirring stuff. But when the judge comes to his summing up, his contempt for Edith is clear. He refers to her as the woman and dismisses her letters as
Gush! The outpourings of a silly, but at the same time wicked, affection.
and he makes great play of lacerating something which Edith wrote to Freddie.
He has the right by law to all that you have the right to by nature and love.
Gentlemen.
Says the judge, ignoring the fact that there is a woman in the jury.
Gentlemen, if that nonsense means anything, it means that the love of a husband for his wife is something improper, because marriage is acknowledged by the law, and that the love of a woman for her lover, illicit and clandestine, is something great and noble. I am certain that you, like any other right-minded persons, will be filled with disgust at such a notion.
He goes on to offer the jury this advice.
You should not forget that you are in a court of justice trying a vulgar and common crime. You are not listening to a play from the stalls of a theater.
It's true the trial had become a national soap opera. The jury is urged to remain as hard-headed and objective as possible and answer one question and one question only. Had Edith encouraged Freddie to kill her husband, yes or no? On this note, the case is recessed until Monday morning. Jury leaveth
The courtroom for a weekend break, with time to ponder what they should do.
They know that it's no picnic, there are lives at stake. Their duty is to work out what is true.
Innocent or guilty, that's what they have to ask, and making a decision is their major task. The judge had to cast a cold eye on them both, it seems. He thought it seemed a tawdry affair.
Though some may feel their romance was the stuff of dreams, he viewed them as a low-down pair.
Innocent or guilty, what's the final choice? Soon enough the jury must speak with one voice.
With one voice. Edith and Freddie have to wait 2 excruciating days for the jury to reconvene. That weekend, some members of the public queue for 29 hours to get a guaranteed seat in the spectators' gallery. Tickets for seats are available for huge prices on the black market.
Innocent or guilty is what they want to know. Catch the next installment of this thrilling show.
First up is the jury's verdict on Freddie.
Guilty!
And no recommendation that the young man should be shown any mercy on account of his age. Clearly he is guilty, it wasn't self-defense. Freddie is a killer, that's just common sense. Now for the jury's verdict on Edith. It was felt that this decision hangs in the balance. It truly could go either way. The spectators hold their breath. Innocent or guilty, which way will they sway? Innocent or guilty, now they have to say.
Guilty!
Edith drops her head and starts to sob. Freddie calls out.
I say the verdict of the jury is wrong. Edith Thompson is not guilty.
The judge ignores this. He places a black cap on his head and addresses both the accused.
The sentence of this court is that you will be taken from here to the place from whence you came, and there kept in close confinement until the date of execution. And upon that day you will be taken to the place of execution and there hanged by the neck until you are dead. And may God have mercy upon your soul.
As Edith is led out, shocked and broken, she cries out.
I am not guilty. Oh God, I am not guilty.
But the word guilty is emblazoned on the front pages of every newspaper the next day. Most of the editorials suggest that the young man got what was coming to him, and that the woman also got her just desserts. Some readers are perhaps pleased that Edith has been taught a lesson which other loose-living young women might do well to learn, all those flappers who enjoy partying more than settling down and having a family.
Punished, every woman with a need to feel she's free. Punished, every woman dressed to look like Clara Bow. Punished, every woman with a skirt above the knee. Punished, every woman with her bosom out on show. A new generation of women were out there with plenty of money and morals to spare, who questioned their men and the whole status quo, to stand up and fight for their right to say no. Punished.
If you read the editorials of the day, you'll see that the leading writers have a field day with their moralizing. Here's an extract from a pamphlet issued by the Daily Express after the court decision.
Her illicit passion devoured her. There is no evidence of the restraining influence of religion or honor or morality. Where were all the old anchors and moorings in this grimy surge of moral anarchy? Is it a glimpse of a modern London without a conscience or an ideal?
The date for the hanging is announced, the 9th of January, 1923. This means that Freddie and Edith will be waiting a month before their final day on Earth. It took a month. They had to wait a month in the shadow of the gallows, in the darkest of a cell, with no reprieve, no hope of a reprieve, in the shadow of the gallows, in the darkest part of hell. And on Christmas Day, it was Edith's birthday too, 29 today. Happy birthday, Edith. Happy birthday to you. They spent a month, a never-ending month, in the shadow of the gallows. What they suffered, who can tell? And yet, during this month, something happens. Public opinion shifts. As the date of the execution gets nearer, there is a growing unease about the notion of a woman going to the gallows. No woman had been hanged in Britain for the previous 15 years. People start speaking out on Edith's behalf, empathizing with her desperate situation and trying to reclaim her tattered reputation. She had been vilified like no other figure in recent history. I try to understand the despoiling of her name. I try to contemplate her unfathomable shame. They tried to make out she was nothing but a whore. The papers branded her as that and nothing more. Then there were others, mostly girls and wives and mothers, who saw something in her face, something in her story,
Something in her case,
something touching glory. They saw joy in her letters, flagrant passion and excess. They saw Romeo romancing his suburban Juliet, a tale that they could not forget. They were touched by her letters, by the heartache in her words, and the only crime they ever truly thought her guilty of was being far too much in love. A campaign is started to save Edith from her death sentence. Over 1 million signatures are gathered. Edith's mother writes to the Home Secretary with the hope that mercy might be granted. In the previous decade and a half, several condemned women have been pardoned, including a woman who had killed her children and a woman who had set her lover alight with paraffin. Edith is surely a more sympathetic character than these, and yet the appeal is rejected. Bitterly disappointed, Edith writes to her childhood friend Bessie.
The result of the appeal was a great shock to me. I had such hopes of it. Not only hopes for mercy, but hopes for justice. But I realize how very difficult it is to fight prejudice.
Still, her parents and her sister continue to beg the authorities to reconsider. They send a telegram to King George V at Buckingham Palace. Desperate measures, but what else could they do? Then, a chink of light. On the 8th of January, the day before the hangings, the Daily Express prints this headline.
Final effort to save Mrs. Thompson.
The Home Secretary consents to a last-minute meeting with one of the lawyers on Edith's case. It seems there is still hope, which of course Edith's family cling on to desperately. As they make their final visit to see Edith in prison, Edith's father is handed a message addressed from Lord Bethall, a member of Parliament. It reads,
I have sent telegram to the Home Secretary and the King for pardon for your daughter. Good news coming.
Oh, the family are overjoyed and immediately share the amazing news with Edith. They can barely believe it. They shouldn't have believed it. It was a cruel hoax from an anonymous prankster. The governor of the prison has to tell them finally and definitively that the law must and will take its course. In one of her letters to Freddie, Edith had once written about how she deals with novels that disappoint her or have endings not to her taste.
Forget the end, and in your own mind, make your own end.
I wish I could come up with a happy ending to Edith's tale about how she is indeed granted a last-minute reprieve and delivered from her sentence. But that would make this story a romantic fiction, the sort that Edith loved. And it's not that. But there is one story about Freddie that is, well, happy is not the right word, but touching. It's an anecdote related in a memoir by Major Blake, the governor of Pentonville Prison, where Freddie was incarcerated.
The night before he was to be hanged, I called him into my room. I could not bear the idea of that boy being all alone with his thoughts. He sat down, and I started speaking to him about his travels. And then he told me how beautiful were the colors of the aurora borealis and the wonderful sunsets, and about the strange lands he had visited.
There are beautiful sounds in this world I'll miss, like the sound of the horn of a ship. It's a sound signifying adventures to come, of giving your whole life the slip. There are beautiful sights in this world I'll miss, like the sight of a coconut tree. It's a sight that evokes days of tropical sun, and that's manna to someone like me. A sailor can see and hear so many things, things most men don't know exist. I've tasted such things and I know there are more, things I find hard to resist. But I know what I'm facing instead. There's no hope of a future ahead. I can only imagine what I might have seen. I can only imagine who I might have been if I only had time stretching ahead. If I didn't know in a few hours I would be dead, stone cold and dead, and laid on a slab. Which is why I look back and I greedily grab at the memories, all of the treasures trapped in my mind, savoring all of the places that I'll leave behind. There are beautiful things in this world I'll miss, like a woman who
offered her soul. She was someone who made me her world for a while, and somehow her love made me whole. Of all the most beautiful things that were, the most beautiful thing in the world was her.
In the last words that he ever wrote, in a letter to a boyhood friend, Freddie said this:
I want you always to love and cherish her memory as a brave-hearted, noble, and loyal woman. Don't pity her, but love her. We will soon be together. And what was not to be on this sordid plain, the land of cowards and curs, will be in another world.
On the morning of the 9th of January, 1923, Edith in Holloway Prison and Freddie in Pentonville Prison are prepared for the gallows. Finally, they and the nation reach the climax of a story which has been fodder for pub discussions and dinner party debates for weeks. It is now, in the build-up to the execution itself, that the newspapers go into overdrive.
Listen to this, haven't you heard? It's breaking news. Time to get dressed, put on your tux and your dancing shoes. There is a phrase, how does it go? Death, where is thy sting? Gotta dance, gotta sing, gotta see Edith Thompson swing. No doubting the facts, one hell of an acto, bo-do-de-o-do. So pull up a chair and say you were there and watch the show. What a furor, what a shebang, and say what a day. Everyone cheer, everyone here, shout hip hip hooray. I hear the death knell chime, hear the bell go ding-a-ling. Gotta dance, gotta sing, gotta see Edith Thompson swing.
Freddie is very much the supporting act on this bill. He is somber and calm and makes no fuss as the hangman puts a leather bag over him and leads him to the drop. Freddie is dispatched with cool efficiency. His death is massively upstaged by Edith, who is in a hysterical state as she is ushered from her cell, shivering and whimpering.
Oh, I hear her moaning low.
Ooh, I hear her cry.
So don't draw it out, let's go. No time to waste, we want to see, we have to see, we need to see her die. No time for the blues, she's paying her dues, oh, bo-do-de-o-do. She's going to hell, it's gonna be swell, so watch her go. I bet she's a nervous wreck now, wrap that noose around her neck now. Countdown begins, so now is the time to hold your breath.
And soon enough you'll all be a witness to her death. Soon she'll be dangling from the end of a piece of string. Gotta dance,
7,
gotta sing,
6,
gotta see
Five,
Edith Thompson
2, 1.
swing.
Edith's execution spurred rumors that it was a botched job. It said that the sudden stop of the rope caused a massive hemorrhage and that Edith's womb imploded. Witnesses have attested to this, but it can't be verified. What we do know is that Edith's hangman, John Ellis, was so shaken by the mess of her death that a year later he resigned from the job of executioner and began campaigning for the abolition of capital punishment. He later committed suicide by cutting his own throat. As I look through all the cuttings, the court documents, the biographies, the case histories, it's this extraordinary collection of 64 letters that I keep returning to. And amidst the thousands of words that Edith wrote, 2 sentences above all stand out. They come from the final letter she wrote to Freddie the day before the murder.
Your love to me is my life. And if things should go badly with us, I shall always have this past year to look back upon and feel that then I lived. I never did before, and I never shall again. When I look back on this year, I will look back and I'll say I lived like I never have before, and I never will again. I lived, and all those memories, those precious memories, I will keep them in my heart forevermore, forevermore. I'll know for sure I lived. Though there were days and nights I cursed my fate all through the wrongs and rights, the love, the hate, no matter what hell I went through, I'm glad that I shared it with you.
We were reckless, crazy fools who threw caution to the wind, but lived. We lived. Yes, we made some big mistakes, and we paid for every one, but lived. We lived.
Now I'm a part of you,
And I'm a part of you, and I want to take your picture to my grave, and there engraved will be the words, I lived. Though they put us both to death, we knew till our final breath what we had wasn't sordid or small. For a while,
what we had
for a while was it all.
We had it all.
And for eternity, for all eternity, when they talk of us, our names will be entwined.
We both knew it from the start.
We will never be apart.
And now, darling, in my heart, you live.
Edith's sister Ava spent the rest of her life trying to get a pardon for Edith, to no avail. Should she have been found innocent? Was she, in effect, hanged for adultery? The lawyer for her defense told the jury quite frankly that Edith was no saint, but, he added,
Fortunately, we are in a court of law, not a court of morality.
I wonder if ultimately that was true. Look, I'm not excusing the fact that Edith was playing with fire, but in the end, however foolish or irresponsible or even suspicious her words might seem, were they proof beyond reasonable doubt of her intent to truly incite murder? If there is any doubt at all, and this case is shrouded in doubt, how can anyone justify an execution? As far as the authorities are concerned, the case is long over and done with. There's nothing more to be said about it. I don't agree. I think the ghost of Edith Thompson haunts us to this day. Lives that were cut short were anatomized in court in a murder case in 1922.
And two lovers paid a price for what was seen as vice in that murder case in 1922.
As they led her to the gallows, Edith whimpered and she cried, proclaiming she was innocent, but all the same she died in that murder case in 1922. A shocking murder and first degree, the cruelest murder that there can be. No one doubts the horror of the killing that took place. What is doubted is the justice of the legal case. Should Edith now be pardoned if she's truly not to blame? Or maybe you believe that she deserves her tainted name? The question of her innocence still haunts us to this day. Some say the case is closed, but I believe there's more to say. For who can tell exactly what is false and what is true about a murder case in 1922? Roy Barbosa as Freddie, Christina Vallow as Edith, Ryland Shelton as all of the men, and me, Elise Dewsbury, as the writer. And thank you to Chris Burgess.
Thank you.